Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master at Fort Worth 148. And on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about George Washington's Gavel and Trowel with special guest
David Bella, Senior Warden of Alexandria, Washington Lodge number 22, beholden under the Grand Lodge of Virginia.
And Travis Galey, the Junior Steward for Potomac Lodge number 5 in the Grand Lodge of Washington, D.C.
I like how you said beholden to, David. That's some official talk right there.
we're fancy at AW.
There you go. So before we get into like the gavel and trowel itself, which to just get, let the listeners know, this gavel was used by George Washington in a and forgive me for my R in there. I am a Texan, so George Washington. It was used during a cornerstone leveling of the Capitol building, right?
It was created and designed for laying the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol, as was the trowel, which Brother Bella is in charge of with the AW-22.
Yeah. So before we get into all those details, because man, there's some cool stuff. I want to go over how we met, because that's what I love about this fraternity, is how it brings together people from all over the country, world. I mean, because that was an international event we had in Laredo, Texas. So you guys were a little far from home. How did that come about? How did y'all end up in Laredo, Texas? What was the genesis of that idea?
It really started because of the brothers in Laredo wanting to celebrate the George Washington birthday. They have a big Washington celebration in Laredo. Strangely, who knew? One of the largest celebrations of Brother George Washington in the world happens there. And
the largest.
The largest, that's correct. And they wanted to bring these George Washington artifacts together to help celebrate Brother Washington. Man,
that's awesome. I mean, because it's Laredo, that's the bottom of Texas right there. So we had brothers from Mexico there. I know it was a spiritual event for myself. And I kind of what was your guys' take of that whole weekend?
Well, I can say for the Virginia guys, I mean, it was just a really eye-opening experience for us, because we don't travel with the trowel too much. It was just so illuminating how fraternal everyone truly is, and how welcoming and what great hosts Masons really are. I mean, everybody was so warm and friendly, and we, our schedules were jam-packed, but we had so much fun, and really, it was a really memorable event for me and the lodge. And I'm sure Travis kind of feels the same way.
Absolutely. This was actually my first trip with the gavel. We travel a little bit more than AW-22 does with the trowel, and it was for me, it was coming home to Texas, which I'm a native Texan, so that was special for me. But I was blown away by the brotherhood that was displayed from the brothers of Laredo Lodge 547. Is that correct?
Well, man, you're going to put me on the spot. Now I'm going to get in trouble.
I'm almost positive it's Laredo Lodge 547, but they were.
Sounds right. Yeah.
They blew me away, with how well they treated us, and it was a special trip.
Man, they kind of have a unofficial nickname down there. It's the Party Cartel. And man, they lived up to every ounce of that name. God, it was such a good time. I know you guys were very busy, and you have more important things on your mind that weekend, but I was footloose and fancy free. I don't guess you guys marched in the parade, did you?
We did not get to do the parade.
I didn't figure as much. I mean, you're watching your baby, you know what I mean? So I totally understand, but that was such a great event. Huge. I mean, it was thousands and thousands of people. This wasn't a baby parade. It was gigantic. And I was so glad that I went, because that was my first visit to Laredo as well. But that whole evening was great. The night before, the day of, it was a great event. Yeah. So let's talk Trowel and Gavel. Trowel first, Travis. David, just kind of describe, if you would, to the listeners, kind of give them an idea of what it looks like.
Sure. So the trowel is like any trowel that I guess you would imagine. You know, for the my girlfriend, she described it as a cake cutter. It's a little bit more ceremonial, I think, than a garden trowel that we use in the garden today. But it's really pretty small. I think people are surprised how small it actually is. It fits in the palm of your hand, and the handle probably fits within fingertip to the palm of your hand. Made out of sterling silver, and the handle is actually ivory, and it has an inscription describing the event in 1793, the cornerstone laying, with George Washington's name featured on there, and it rests on a little pillow, and is in comparison to the Potomac Gavel, it is much smaller, but it's still I think it's in my opinion, it's a little bit prettier. It's more delicate.
There we go. Yeah, it's not about the size. Let's not get into that, David. So if guys wanted to see a picture of it, where would they go?
Yeah, so that's a great plug, I guess, for the Lodge's website. There's I think if you Google Alexander Washington Lodge, number 22, silver trowel, there's a special page dedicated to the history of the trowel, that special day, and the subsequent events that it's been a part of in American history. So Google it, go to the AW22 website, you'll see a good write-up out there.
Gotcha. So describe the gavel, if you will, Travis.
Well, I would say it's a little more manly in size than the trowel.
Ouch. Ouch.
It's horrible.
Teasing. It looks just like any other gavel, only it is it's made from the head of it is made from marble, and it's from the same marble that was used to create the U.S. Capitol. It's mined from the same quarry, and it's got a cherry wood stem. No clue whether that cherry wood came from George Washington's property or not. It probably did not, in fact, but it's still appropriate that it's cherry wood with Brother Washington.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, Potomac actually added a gold cap on top with an inscription certifying that this was the exact gavel used by Brother Washington in the laying of the cornerstone for the U.S. Capitol. So it's quite old, and it's delicate now. The wood has had some damage. We don't ever actually grab it by the handle. We only grab it by the marble head, because the wood has suffered some fractures in the past. So it's, we treat it literally with gloved hands. I mean, it's a national treasure that we try to take the best care of we can.
No. So the marble, what's the color like of the marble?
It's a white marble. Like I said, if you look at the U.S. Capitol and you see the marble used for it, it's that same look.
Gotcha.
It came from the same quarry in Maryland where that came from.
So let me ask you this, because when I first saw it and I saw the gold cap, it took me a second to process that. What are your thoughts about that being added later?
It's I don't know, honestly.
That's the way I felt.
Yeah, it was added about 1858. It was quite a bit after the gavel was made. The gavel was made in like 1792, 1793. Mm-hmm. So it was added quite a bit after that. And I certainly understand the brothers at the time, wanting to make sure that everyone knew that this, it's basically a certification saying this is it, this is what was used.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly understand the desire for that, but like the purist in me would also love to see it just plainly adorned, without any added on. But
yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because it made me feel some kind of way. It's not like I was like, oh, that's horrible, but I was like, should they have done that? Should they not have? Because I get it, like you said, but I was like, shouldn't they have done that on a box or something? Made it really cool, but it was interesting how when I first saw it, my mind immediately went there, after I learned that it was added after the fact, because I thought it was original at first, and then, little pamphlet you had.
Right. And it is a gorgeous gold.
It looks good. Yeah, don't get me wrong. It looks good.
It does. But it was not original.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like putting a tiara on the Mona Lisa almost. It was just weird, you know what I mean? And that's the reason why I wanted to ask, because I didn't expect to, I caught myself after about 15 minutes of thinking about it, like, I didn't think, I'd go down that rabbit hole that deep. But it is different, but it looks good. So where do they find a picture of that if they want to take a gander at it?
I will plug our own website, potomac5.org. And if you want to get really technical, it's potomac5.org/George-Washington-Gavel. But if you just go to our website, you can click it there. And there's also a picture, by the way, of both the Gavel and the Trowel on the Capitol Visitors website.
Oh, cool.
But our websites are better, so go there first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pump up those websites. So let's hear the backstory. What makes them so awesome?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll go first. So, I mean, the history, and there's probably a lot of overlap, and so sorry if I'm speaking for you, Travis, but there's just so much history, and it really revolves around the first time that they really came together. So they were created for that special event, September 18th, 1793, where George Washington traveled across the Potomac River into D.C. from Virginia, escorted by Alexander Washington Lodge. At the time, it was just Alexandria Lodge because it was not named after Washington until he died. But so it was used there, along with several other famous Masonic implements, like the apron, the working tools. They're still in the DC area. And from there, they've been used in a whole host of cornerstone ceremonies for some of America's most famous buildings. I mean, the Smithsonian, the Washington Monument, Supreme Court, and then, of course, lots of kind of our famous Masonic landmarks in America, too. The Supreme Council for the Southern Jurisdiction in DC, the Detroit Masonic Temple. So really, they're two very important pieces of history for America's history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it. Travis, you got anything to add on that?
You know what? No, I don't. That was very well said. And, it's to add on to, actually, I do want to add on to that, just because since Brother Washington used it, and honestly, it is awesome in the sense that it is awe-inspiring to actually to be able to see this instrument that was used to build our country. Yeah, I mean, literally to lay the cornerstone of our country, and used by George Washington, who commissioned this. It is a special thing to behold. And then since then, it's gone on to be used by multiple presidents to lay the cornerstones for, multiple buildings that also have an important place in our country. For instance, the Washington Monument. It was used. President James K. Polk used the gavel to lay the cornerstone for the monument. strangely enough, even Queen Elizabeth used the gavel when the Britain was expanding their embassy here in Washington, D.C. She came to the ceremony and used it, which is, I always kind of find ironic considering, we got our independence from them, and here she was, in 1959 using this gavel that George Washington used. So it's kind of funny, but this gavel's been, used by presidents and queen alike, and to really build up our nation, a lot of important buildings throughout our history.
Yeah.
Including the George Washington National Masonic Memorial, which now houses AW22 and the Trowel and many other important artifacts.
Yeah. And, going back a little bit farther, even, to how they were actually made, both of these instruments, I believe, were made by Brother John Duffy, who was a silversmith living in Alexandria, and he was a member of Fredericksburg 4, which is also a very famous lodge because Fredericksburg 4 is where George Washington received his 3 degrees in masonry. So there's quite a historical, thread that can be pulled in multiple directions. But yeah, so I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and they have, by the way, they have the Bible that was used in the laying of the cornerstone ceremony. Oh, wow. And we're invited to Laredo and just couldn't make the logistics work. But it would be cool to get all those implements back together again in one place.
That is interesting. Because of course the history and the fact that it was in George Washington's hands, that all of that is so special. There's no doubt. And I admittedly even get into the woo part of it, of the energy that it gathers along its travels from being in OG Dub's hands all the way through those buildings and other, very influential people in our history. It creates energy and carries it with it. But aside from all of that, the statement it makes for you guys to come down here, come down to Texas and Laredo to share that with your brothers. You'd never met Reuben, you'd never met those guys down there.
Yeah.
That's such a loud statement. And that's what I love about our fraternity, that you guys packed it up. And we're going to get into the process of packing that thing up, because it's not like you just run it through and put it in the old suitcase and hop on the plane. That's such a loud statement of brotherly love. And there is a bunch of energy that comes with that. Gavel aside, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a very, very loud statement. And that's what really hit me about it, because it was the whole event was great. But that day when we first got there in front of the statue and you guys had that out, for the community to stop and see, of course, you guys are guarding it very well and all those procedures, but it made that, the cherry on top of that whole ceremony. It was really made it that much more powerful, I think, for everybody. So, there's a lot to be said about those kind of artifacts.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, when we decide whether to go on a trip to display the gavel somewhere, it's always a competing interest of, how much protection do we provide it, and whether the event is, I don't want to say important enough, but it's a, we don't want to go to just any, Joe Bob's birthday.
Yeah.
It's got to be of some import, as well as, weighing that versus spreading the light of Masonry through this article, which was used to spread the light of Masonry. So there's always, these factors that we weigh when we vote as a lodge whether to fulfill a gavel request.
Yeah. And, I'll jump in with the anecdote. I think this is the perfect time for it. So the trowel and the gavel, between the two lodges, we get together, relatively frequently, once or twice a decade in the DC area. But traveling, I think, is much different for the two lodges. And I kind of came to this realization when we were doing a radio segment down in Laredo, and we were talking about just how AW approaches traveling with the Trowel versus how Potomac does. And so Potomac, from what I gather, goes about, pre-COVID, once a year to go travel and display the gavel, whereas the Trowel, because we meet in the George Washington Masonic National Memorial, people come to us.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very unique and special for us because in institutional memory, we can't really remember bringing the Trowel outside of, a 30, 40, 50 mile radius of DC. And so this was the first time that the Trowel had ever flown. It was the farthest that it had ever traveled. And there was a lot of deliberation about actually bringing the Trowel, or we even have a replica because of we don't want to use it in the actual cornerstone ceremonies. But we felt like it was such an important event that we wanted to be there with the actual Trowel that Washington used. And I think it really paid off, and I think it was probably the right decision. So it was a great event.
Yeah, well, so you certainly have my vote. And I know a lot of brothers from Laredo, man, because there was so much buzz about that whole event, but that was part of the buzz, was that gavel and trowel. So it was very, very powerful. So how did it end up in two separate lodges, though?
That was actually Brother Washington. So when he did the ceremony, he then took the artifacts, and we're the lodges that took part in the ceremony for the laying of the cornerstone. So he took the artifacts and gave them to the worshipful masters of those lodges as a gift, as a thank you. So Potomac 5 got the gavel, AW 22 got the trowel, Fredericksburg Lodge number 4 got the Bible, and I believe there was one other lodge that got the I'm not sure what they got actually, but I believe there was one other lodge there as well that also got an implement.
I think, well, you have the square and all that stuff that's used as well.
Exactly. Yeah,
maybe got the working tools.
Exactly. So it was a meeting of, these Maryland and Virginia lodges that came together and performed the ceremony. At the time, the District of Columbia did not exist, and there was no Grand Lodge for the District of Columbia. Potomac was a member of the Maryland Grand Lodge at the time. So, they all met at a pub and marched down to the Capitol and performed the ceremony, and afterwards retired back to the pub, where I'm sure some libations were.
Oh, dang, this is a Texas podcast. What are you talking about drinking for?
Some things in masonry don't ever change. After you perform the ceremony, you got to go knock one back.
Amen to that. So when I was talking to Jeremy about this, just I was blown away that, here was a gavel George Washington held in his hands. He had mentioned that the employee of the museum referred to it as a living artifact. And I love that description because it's on display and it's being used. It's not just sitting up in a display case. But the fact that you guys had mentioned all those things that had done laid a cornerstone here or there, that it's actually been used throughout its history. That's not so much the case anymore now, right? You're not going to use it for a ceremony, or is that still an option if there was one special enough?
Honestly, it would have to be voted on again by the lodge, and there would be a lot of debate in lodge about that. So I can't say no, but given the fragility of the handle, I'm not sure what it would take to be used in a ceremony again.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I'll jump in and say, because the trowel started getting damaged in the ceremonies, we actually created a replica trowel that has been used locally for the last 50, 60 years. And the real trowel has only been used twice since the replica has been made, and that's for the 200th anniversary of the Capitol cornerstone laying, and then the 225th cornerstone anniversary, which I was lucky enough to be a part of. But yeah, so very rare, and something to rise to that occasion. It's
Gotcha.
probably the only way.
But it's still an option, you're saying.
Yeah, and we're definitely happy to use the replica as well, which has also been used in a lot of very famous buildings in the last half century or so.
No, I think that's so awesome that you guys have that and that responsibility, and it's not something that you take lightly at all. Obviously, it's great. So where you had mentioned the trials kept at the George Washington Memorial. Where's the Gavel kept?
So the Gavel has two homes when it's not in use. One is it has been displayed at the Capitol Visitor Center, and that was going on until they closed it for renovations. And I believe it may end up back there when they reopen. But we're in negotiations with the Capitol over that. When it's not there, there's actually a bank vault across the street from our lodge that is specially built just to house the Gavel. There's a display front on the front so you can actually see the Gavel, and that's where it resides. And until brothers from Potomac 5 go to retrieve it and take it someplace.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong on this at any point, because Jeremy kind of described this to me as well during the meeting, that it's a safe deposit box. It is what I'm picturing. You walk into a room full of safe deposit box, and then there's one safe deposit box that has a plexiglass front window.
That's correct. And to our knowledge, it's the only safety deposit box of its kind in the world
that you can see the contents of, right?
Correct.
That's so crazy. So if I just happen to have an artifact in there, I walk in and I'm like, oh, somebody's storing a gavel here. They'll be able to see what's in the content. And that was so, I mean, I think it's cool. It's unique. It's a great story. I don't know the purpose of it, I guess you could.
I think the bank is as proud to display it as we are to own it. So that's really why they did it. It's they want to they like to show that they are responsible for it as well. It's safety.
Makes perfect sense. Hey, you don't feel safe storing your stuff here? That's OG Dub's Gavel right there. That's genius marketing.
I mean, I sure as heck would do it, wouldn't you?
Yes, it's the number one rule: follow the money, man. Exactly. It makes sense of the money. So that's great. And I assume Trowel, same thing, kind of in a display lockdown case there at the George Washington Memorial.
Right. Yeah. It is featured in the replica lodge room. So there's a room in the George Washington Masonic National Memorial that is what AW's lodge room looked like when it was above City Hall in Alexandria. And it has the original chairs and the famous William Williams portrait, which George Washington sat for in Masonic regalia, that isn't really widely known about because it is Washington. The only reason he actually sat for it, he hated sitting for paintings because so many people had requested them, but he said yes for the lodge. So it's right there with a whole bunch of other Washington artifacts. It's a definite highlight of the tour if you come and take the tour.
Cool. So you guys kind of alluded to the travel. Let's talk about how that goes. What goes into actually taking that thing on the road?
It's a process. It is, and as David mentioned, the Trowel hasn't traveled as much, but the Gavel has, and in our travels we've developed some procedures, but it is quite a bit. We literally have a case that was custom built to house the gavel so that it's well protected. And then we handcuff the case to one of our wrists so that it cannot be, just snatched or grabbed.
So cool.
And there's a minimum of 3 brothers at all times with the gavel. So when we travel with it, we want to make sure that there's security in place, down to the point where if we're flying into an airport, we make sure security there is aware, and we've had armed escorts with us this whole trip down to Laredo. It was really kind of neat. And in fact, the Brothers of Laredo Lodge even had the police officers waiting for us on the tarmac as we got off the plane. Instead of going into the airport, we walked right onto the tarmac, got into a car, and had a police escort straight to the lodge. So
that's so legit.
That was really kind of cool. It felt like being, the president or something.
Yeah.
But we take the gavel security seriously, because there's nothing you can do to repair it. You know what I mean? It's one of
it's priceless.
Lost or exactly. And there have reports that there's people on the dark web offering money to if somebody can get a hold of the gavel, and there's been reported threats in the past, and none of us want to be the brother that loses the George Washington gavel.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I don't know that your name would ever be mentioned in Lodge again.
No, I and you could tell, because it was literally like Secret Service guy. All of us are having a good time doing, whatever it is. And then you just see these random guys in the crowd staring at that gavel and trowel, never taking their eyes off of it. And it's like, oh, wow. And then when I saw them handcuff that to the case to their wrist, I thought, man, the only thing that's missing is the James Bond theme music right now.
Yeah, we were lucky. Our one of the 3 that traveled with us, Mike Bailey, is a past master, and he's the treasurer of our lodge, and he's a law enforcement officer. So we were in good hands on that front too. Yeah. But it I think Travis alluded to it. It takes the archives committee to vote to release it to travel, and then it also takes a vote of the lodge. Definitely cleared those 2 hurdles, and it was great. I mean, Potomac guys set everything up for us and held our hands all the way through the process. So shout out to y'all, and then the Laredo guys for actually when we were in Texas. There was a fantastic hosting, like I said before.
I would have to give a big shout out to Worshipful Brother Jeremy Barnes, the past master of Potomac 5, who did a lot of the legwork on setting this up. And we have other brothers who are law enforcement as well, who helped arrange security details for, when we stepped into the airport in D.C., as well as when we had our layover in Houston. I mean, we had, security the whole way through. And that took a lot of prep work to lay that in place.
Yeah.
Again, that's what it takes for us to be able to say, yes, this is something we'll do. We want to make sure that this is protected, and that this national treasure will live on well past our day.
Yeah. No, that is so great. And it was great. It's great that Laredo took it serious as well, because it, that sounded like seamless security. I know when after the event on the initial day, and we had the party afterwards, and you guys showed up, but it was no fun and games for y'all. It was still handcuffed to your hand, never left your sight, and it's not like you could just start throwing back libations. You know what I mean? You got more important things to do. But you guys even opened it up for people to see it that evening, which I thought that's so Masonic. It doesn't get any better than that.
Well, that goes back to, and I said, spreading the light, but that really is what this is about for us. This is about showing off Freemasonry. It's a national artifact, true, but this is a way for us to display the Masonic nature of George Washington, and get people talking about Freemasonry, and seeing, that there's a lot of good that's still being done in the brotherhood.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So, are there any crazy stories you guys want to lay on us? It sounds like you guys are so precautious. There's nothing fun to tell.
I think I got one. This is an anecdote that I picked up on the trip or preparing for the trip. So, AW, because the Trowel is a lot smaller, I think we have a little bit of an advantage. We can go incognito with it. So it's walking through the airport, it looked like we were just accompanying the Potomac guys, but that never stops somebody from, when they actually have it in their hand, to actually damage or not hold it right. So I think the story was Calvin Coolidge, President Calvin Coolidge, back in the 20s. He was not a Mason, but he participated in the cornerstone laying ceremony, and he actually dipped the trowel into the mortar. Like a legit trowel actually would be done. And so the mortar scuffed up the silver. So I think that was a driving force to get the replica for the remaining ceremonies. But I think that's about as wild as it gets for us.
Yeah,
I cannot imagine.
That'll do it. That'll cause you to get a replica for sure.
I'd be mortified.
I don't really have any crazy stories because we do take so many precautions. But probably one of the most interesting stories, though, is our worshipful master, when he received it, Valentine Reinsel, when he received the gavel, took it home and pretty much just put it away. It wasn't like it was immediately stored and displayed and treasured. It was up in his closet until the day he died, at which point his wife was like, "Hey guys, I've got this gavel here. Do you want it back?"
Oh, man.
And of course we did. But you think about that, I mean, she just as easily could have kept it in the family or done something else, and it would have been in private hands and
sold it on Etsy. Man, I'm telling no, some things don't change. I mean, I know in our library here at the Fort Worth Temple, we have boxes of stuff that wives, widows are like, I don't know what to do with this. And of course we take it and try to do something with it, but man.
Yeah. Well, in this case, it was the gavel used to lay the cornerstone of the old Valentine just threw it up in the closet and said, that was neat. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, by the way, not only was he the past master for Potomac 5, he then became the first Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of D.C. when it was founded. So our roots go deep.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. There's no doubt you guys, so much history over there on the East Coast that we would definitely have you guys on again. This whole thing though, it really reminded me about what we, as Freemasons, what we have laying in wait in our closets. I mean, it's not going to be the gavel that George Washington used at the Capitol building, of course, but there are many special artifacts that we have in our lodge buildings that is sacred to our communities, as small or as big as they might be. My lodge has a bell that rumor is George Washington gave to his first chaplain, who was the grandfather of one of our members, first members, charter members. So
cool.
And we use that as well to go out and dedicate, like we did it for the police ceremony, the memorial that they did for fallen police and firefighters. And it's just such a great way to connect with the community.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we don't go out and recruit, but it is important to have, a connection with the communities you're in and to go out and display the light of the brotherhood, just through our actions and being a part of the community and finding these ways to connect. It's awesome. And it's awesome to have something that helps facilitate that, like a gavel or trowel or a bell.
It's a great wedge to get in the door for sure.
Yeah.
And it's a great education piece too, right? Because I mean, we can, the the farther and farther we get away from these historic events, the less and less relevant they become to the public. And I think it's just a great way to engage civically with, the members of our communities, and then, going out to other people's communities to educate about George Washington and why he was so important to our country. One of the things I really enjoyed was seeing the kids at the Laredo Lodge come and look at it. I mean, it was just so cool to see, 10, 12-year-olds be fascinated by something that they, would only read about in books, but actually got the opportunity to see up close in person. So that was very cool too.
Yeah. No, when you do see something like that, it's hard to deny that those artifacts don't carry some kind of energy with them. I mean, it's fascinating to the thoughts that start generating in your mind, the motivation you get. Because I mean, I know when I was sitting there, the thoughts flooding through, it kicked up cornerstones for me a notch. I've always been a fan of them, but it's like, man, these have been going on so long. There's got to be some mojo in that ceremony, and so it kicked that, this how special those are and unique they are for us, even in modern times. So
there's, and not to get too off the tracks, but energy, never dies. It just transforms, and these things carry energy. They definitely do. And it's just neat to even see them and be in the presence of them. And since we do get it out and about, or if it's at the Capitol Visitor Center, I hope listeners I hope they get a chance to see it someday.
Yeah, I do too. There's no doubt about it. And gavel or no gavel, I hope y'all come back to Laredo again sometime, because I'm not missing that again. Y'all need to come back and party with us.
That's a blast.
That was awesome.
Dude, I'm telling you, the Saturday night party, it's the thing of legends. There was a guy on stilts, man.
Now you don't have to rub it in because we weren't there.
Look, hey, you guys, y'all were the cool kids the whole weekend. Y'all had, and I couldn't appreciate y'all's work more, but golly, it was a great night. If you ask most people about it, they wouldn't know, because they wouldn't remember it. It was that good a time.
I think we all look forward to coming back to Laredo. That's
definitely.
It's awesome. Well, you guys got anything before we wrap this thing up? You got anything? You've already plugged your websites. Anything else y'all want to plug? Or
you know what? I wanted to thank you, because listeners may not know, and I'll go ahead and just say this. Rhit currently holds the same position in the Grand Lodge of Texas that my grandfather held. And he was able to pull up a past speech and email it to me, and me and my whole family are very appreciative of that. So I really appreciate you, buddy.
No, man, I'm glad you brought that up, because actually I got replaced in January, because ours Grand Lodge January to January. So I was Grand Order last year when we met.
Gotcha.
And it was your grandfather, right? It was Grand Order.
My grandfather, who was a member in Coleman, Texas, and became Grand Order in 1973.
That's right, 1973. And let me tell you what, that was a good grand oration too. That man did not mince words. That's one of the fieriest grand orations, and I've read a lot of them. That's one of the fieriest, and I love it when men just speak their mind.
He did that his whole life.
I could tell, because there was no mincing words. That's a great oration. So I was glad to share that with you.
You know what? He's a big reason why I'm a Mason today, though. I heard all my life about how he was Grand Order, and there was a lot of pride within my family that he had that position.
Yeah.
And so even though my dad wasn't a Mason, I didn't grow up with it literally in the household. It was a part of our family.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of what sparked my curiosity. And so he's a big reason why I'm here. And so that really did mean a lot to me. I appreciate that.
It's awesome.
Man. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can top that. That's pretty good. Well, so I'll say two things. I mean, I actually kind of have a Masonic tie to Texas as well. My mother's family were Texarkana Masons on the Arkansas side. So also got a.
And I'm sure they were still good people.
Yeah, I'm a big Hog fan, so me and Travis kind of locked horns, I guess you could say, when we were down there. But no, I guess kind of looking to the future too. And I talked about this when I was down in Laredo. We're going to have a very special cornerstone ceremony here in about 10 months in February 2023. It's going to be the 100th anniversary of the cornerstone laying of the George Washington Masonic National Memorial. So all Grand Masters will be in attendance for the Conference of Grand Masters. We're hosting it here in Northern Virginia next year. So we'd love it if you came out and supported us in the cornerstone lane, because I'm sure you'll be able to see all the artifacts that you saw down in Laredo. So that's going to be a really fun time, and we're looking forward to hosting everybody. So hope to see you there.
That does sound fun. And that's plenty of time to plan, guys. 10 months away.
February 2023, baby.
Cool. So before we wrap it up, I've got to plug my stuff. We've got Texas Masonicon coming up. That's August 20th. And we are going to be, maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we've released the speakers, but we are releasing those soon. So check that out on texasmasonicon.com. And then we're going to do a festive board the night before, August 19th as well. I don't think that's been finalized just yet, but it's coming. The price and everything, we're going to do it. But the price is coming. So keep your eye out on texasmasonicon.com as well. And if you got any questions or concerns, you can always contact us through fortworth148.org. All right, gentlemen, I can't thank y'all enough. Y'all got to hit me up. Find something else cool we can talk about on another episode, and we'll do this again.
Sounds good.
Thank
so
you
much
for having us.
You bet, gentlemen. Thank you very much. This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Travis Galey signing off.
Hey, this is David Bella signing off.